Jim embodies the finer elements of a woman. She's mute.
Is that what he said?
No, that's what I said.
I'm glad you said it because I was thinking it and I didn't want to say it and get mabinged by my wife.
Welcome to Damnit Jim, the podcast. A fun and fascinating look at the very influential Star Trek, the original series. My name is Dana Smith, and I'm proud to be your navigator on this journey. And with me, as always, our Commodore of Tomfoolery, my good friend, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan. Oh my God, he's miming. This is the end of our friendship.
Oh, Dana. I read some comments about our episode last week. There were some people who took offense at us being offended by mimes, it seems like.
Yeah, there's people that took offense to that. People took offense to our constant knocking on McCoy. And people were not happy that we, I guess it ties in being a mime, but made fun of the actress who was playing the mime. And as you said in there, you thought she deserved an Emmy.
And then you said she deserved an enema.
Well, I was just joking around. But
we did not, however, get any videos from mimes, which we really wanted to see. Well, I don't know if we really wanted to, but I thought we'd maybe get one, Yeah,
I thought we would too. I thought we'd actually get flooded. If anything, I thought we would get phone calls from mimes, so.
Yeah, nothing. Is there a school that you go to be a mime? Do you know? Like, how there's clown school with the circus?
Yeah.
I wonder if there's mime school.
I think if you go to clown school, if you get kicked out of clown school, they send you to mime school.
So it's like if you don't quite make it through a 4-year college, they send you down to learn how to weld. Except welding is really a useful skill. Miming, not sure. I mean, what do you do with that?
Annoy people on the street.
Totally, just annoy the shit out of people. That's the only thing you can do.
It'd be nice to get a welder and a mimer together, and maybe the welder can weld the mime shut or something.
Do like a cage match, and the mime gets all of the things a mime would use, which would be nothing, and the welder would actually get like welding equipment.
Yeah, I like it. I would pay to see that.
And the welder could just build a cage to put the mime in. And then when the mime did the whole thing where like they were pushing against the wall and they couldn't get out, they really couldn't get out.
Again, something I would pay to watch. Yeah, so Dan, are you aware that like in a week we spring ahead or whatever it's called, time wise?
Yeah. I don't like that.
And this is the year of the locust too, this coming summer.
Wow. I don't even know what that means, but wow, that's scary. Sounds scary.
The 17-year locust?
Cicadas, you mean?
Cicadas, but just 17-year locusts.
No. So they're cicadas. They're not locusts.
Same thing.
I don't think so.
So when I was a kid, there was the cicada infestation, and I've never seen anything like it since.
Yeah. But
I remember my friend and I using his dad and mom's tennis rackets, and we were just out in the yard swinging them like crazy, and we were killing cicadas like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm. How does that make you feel now as an adult?
Those things are ugly. So
They are butt ugly, man. They're fugly, those things. Oh, no, sorry. They're bugly.
But it was always cool. You'd find the bodies, the carcasses where they came out of and stuff. You'd find all those everywhere. But so you're like, what, like 5, 6, 7 years older than me or something?
No, we were born in the same year, Dana. Jesus.
But I mean, you had to experience it too. We lived in the same state.
Yeah, and I do remember that. And you would occasionally find the blue-eyed cicada, which was like the really, really rare one.
Are they normally green-eyed?
I think they're red. I think they're red eyes. But cicadas are not locusts. Cicadas are true bugs in the order of Hemiptera. They're not locusts. They're often incorrectly called locusts.
Well, I could have sworn when I was a kid they called it the 17-year locust.
They may have, but whoever they are were wrong.
It was my parents. So
they were not wrong, Dana. Your parents were never wrong.
So, hey, by the way, speaking of bugs, I was watching, there's a really funny British comedy talk show, Graham Norton show.
Yeah.
And he had Wanda Sykes.
Yeah.
She was talking about when she was a kid that the bug man would come around.
Oh, yeah.
And she said her and her friends would all go chasing the bug man down the street as he sprayed DDT.
Yeah.
And my wife was looking at me and she's like, were you in the same neighborhood? I was like, I think everybody did it.
I think it was a thing. Yeah, it was a thing. You're right.
So I'm not abnormal.
Well, I mean, that was a total normal 1960s kind of thing to do, right? Early 70s, chase the bug guy. Although you're right, the cicadas in some parts of the country this year are going to be like out in full force, and they make a racket. I mean, for people who don't live in an area where there are cicadas, it is like the decibel level rivals that of like a jet.
It's crazy. I mean, it'll wake you up in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, after a while, it's like
tinnitus. I have a ringing in my ears right now, but I'm listening to you on my headphones. So.
So we move on to listener comments, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, that could be a ringing in our ears too, depending on how good or bad they are.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, on Facebook, we got a lot of listener comments this week.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, in case you weren't with us last week, we discussed the empath. And Dan and I had quite a good time with that episode.
Yes, we did.
George Levine said, I love this episode, especially for McCoy's sacrifice.
What sacrifice?
That he decided to take the punishment instead of Spock or Kirk.
Well, we took the punishment, and how come no one thanked us, Dana?
Richard the Bruce. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Richard Bruce. As I thought he was Scottish and led the Scots to freedom. I bet you he's Scottish. So he said, as a young child, seeing this episode made me detest mimes.
Yes, Richard. Yes. Yes.
And I replied to that and said, then you're going to love our episode. I never heard back from him, though.
Maybe a mime got him, turned him into a mime.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
It's like zombies. It's like a zombie. You know, can you imagine an invasion of mimes?
That is scarier than zombies in my mind. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because you can kill a zombie. Maybe you can't kill a mime. I don't know.
Nick Gismondi said the very best of Trek. Maybe he was thinking of a different episode. Rex Vellante said, if I shoot a mime, should I use a silencer? And he says that is a joke by Stephen Wright.
Wow, that is pretty funny, Dana. I like Stephen Wright. I think he's dead, but isn't he?
Is he?
I think a mime killed him.
Our old friend Brian Kavanaugh said, if you hate this episode, then you can't recognize beauty and you have no real love for women. So he went on to say, Jem embodies the finer elements of a woman. She's mute.
Is that what he said?
No, that's what I said.
I'm glad you said it because I was thinking it and I didn't want to say it and get mabinged by my wife.
So I just bought my wife a car, so she's not going to hit me for a while. Run me over, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, not with the new car. She might borrow your car.
Christine Lynn said, as a youngster, loved this episode, even when it took the older me to understand exactly what was happening. My favorite comment this week was Jay Wilson, who said, most empty, boring episode of any series in history. I fell asleep watching the trailer.
Wow. Man, he was more harsh than we were.
So, Dan, that's what I've got for Facebook comments for now. Dan, do you have any emails or phone messages you want to share?
Yeah, and we had a lot of comments this week, Dana, so I'm just going to limit it to 2. We did get a call from our friend Lou in Canada. Here's what he had to say about the empath.
Dan was talking about the sound of music. So if mimes were doing the sound of music, that would be the sounds of silence, wouldn't it?
I really like that, Dana. I thought that was pretty funny. We also heard, once again, from Olaf Olafsson regarding the empath. Olaf said this, oh boy, I used to wonder why I never saw this episode in syndication. Now I know. It's dreadful. Whatever they did, I know. Whatever they did to Joyce Muscat's script just doesn't work. I would assume they, quote, adjusted it to meet budget. Hope they saved a bunch of money because it looks like they spent about $50 and filmed it on an iPhone. Shatner should have given back his salary for this one. Alien buttheads again? It secures the episode Spock's brain for an Emmy win. But But let's leave it at that, Dana. We need to get into this next episode.
Here we go, Dan. Season 3, episode 13, Elaan of Troyius. So we see the Enterprise in orbit around an Earth-like planet.
No. Do you think it's, I don't know, a Class M planet, Dana?
I was wondering. They never say.
They did not this time. Yeah, you're right.
At least they're not orbiting it because I got a distress call. So
Right.
Captain's log, stardate 4372.5. On a top secret diplomatic mission, the Enterprise has entered the Tellan star system. Maintaining communications blackout, we have taken aboard Petri, ambassador from Troyius, and we are now approaching the inner planet Ellis. So we see Kirk get on the turbo lift, followed by McCoy, Spock, and Scotty.
I have to say something about Scotty on the turbo lift. They did a close-up of him, and his hair and the kind of the widow's peak he has, it looked like he was maybe Eddie Munster at about 35 years old. And he's got a comb straight back, and it was kind of slicked. He looked like Eddie Munster to me.
It's that hairstyle that he didn't like.
Yeah, which we would have known once again.
If we did him in production order.
Yeah, exactly.
The way we should have.
Yeah.
So. And Uhura calls and says the Elasians are ready to beam up, and they demand an explanation for the delay. And Spock says, sounds typical of the Elasians. The scientists who have made the initial investigation reported the men were vicious and arrogant. McCoy says, that's just the negative part, Mr. Spock. I've been over those records. Now the women, they're supposed to be something very special. They're supposed to have kind of subtle mystical power that drives men wild.
Jesus, Dana.
You know that somehow this is going to affect Kirk in the episode. So.
Yeah, and we're kind of back to the whole, really very blatant sexism. I mean, we kind of got away from it for a while, didn't we? Because the episodes were so stupid.
You just glossed over the sexism.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
But now they're just like throwing it in our faces. So
yeah.
So in the corridor, they see Ambassador Petri. Petri looks a little like a Smurf. His skin is green.
A lot like a Smurf, yeah.
And he has white hair with kind of like orange lines running through it. Kirk asks what the problem is, and Petri says they have to wait until the dolmen arrive. And Kirk asks, what the devil is a dolmen? So they go into the transporter room, and Petri says the dolmens are their most deadly enemy. They turn towards the transporter pad as 3 men beam aboard in the most fucking ludicrous outfits we've ever seen on the show.
They were so bad. However, though, Dana, there's now some equity in the show because their pants were as short as any women's skirts that any of the Federation had to wear. They had to have some tight, hiked up underwear.
They look like they're designed by 3rd graders. They all but have wings. They're like sparkly and stuff. Just wow.
Yeah, bad.
I could not believe how bad they were.
Very bad. Yep, I agree.
One of the guys steps off the transporter and looks around suspiciously and says, there's a Troyan here. I must know that all is secure before the dolmen is brought on board. Kirk watches this guy carefully, then says, energize. A woman is beamed aboard. And we get a shot that starts at her sandaled feet.
Yeah.
And then the camera moves up to her sparkling purple bikini.
Slowly. I mean, the camera's moving pretty slowly.
Very slowly.
Yeah.
And kind of gets stuck in a couple spots. And all the way up to her high collar that she's wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this looks kind of like Egyptian. She's got black hair, reminiscent of how they show them in old movies and stuff of Egyptians in old movies. Petri steps forward and tries to welcome her, but he is cut off. The woman looks at Kirk and says, you now have permission to take us to our quarters. And Kirk starts to say something to make her understand he's in charge. Kirk asks to speak to the ambassador alone, and he kind of pulls him out by his elbow. Elaan says, you have not been dismissed. So Kirk politely asks if he can have permission to go, and she dismisses him, and Kirk takes Petri out and leads him out of the room.
So the reason Kirk is showing all this deference is because it's some type of diplomatic mission that the Federation has sent him on, and he knows he needs to kind of be, careful with how he deals with this person, right?
Yeah. And I think it's great because he's not just falling in line, and you see him trying.
Yeah.
So in the corridor, Kirk asks Petrie, what the hell is going on? And Petrie says, that creature, Elaan, is to be the wife of our ruler to bring peace. Our two warring planets now possess the capability of mutual destruction. And Kirk says, I see. And Petrie says, she must be taught civilized manners. Kirk says, and you are her teacher? He says, those are my orders. I must ask you and your crew to respect or at least tolerate their arrogance. I will take her the official gifts I bear. Perhaps that will soften her mood.
Got a lot of talking in this episode.
Yeah, Kirk enters the bridge and orders that they head to Troyius at impulse speed.
Well, how far are these planets apart?
Yeah, more than a stone's throw.
I mean, they're in the same star system, right?
Yeah, but look how long it takes us to get to, Mars right now.
Yeah, but if we had impulse power, wouldn't we get there a lot faster?
Well, if we had warp power, we'd get there a lot faster.
Well, I know that is. That's true.
Have you been paying attention to this show, how fast they go? You know what I mean?
No, I know that, but they're not going warp speed. He tells them to go slow, right?
Yeah, but he gives them go 0.7 or something like that impulse.
So how fast is that? Is it 0.7 of warp 1, or is it, because doesn't he say we're going sublight speed?
Yeah, I was just going to say, everyone seems stunned by this, and Scotty steps forward and says, oh, the way to Troyius on impulse. That will take a great deal of time. So Spock comes on the bridge and says the dolman is dissatisfied with her quarters. Uhura stands up and says, I gave up my quarters, and Kirk cuts her off and says he will talk to them himself.
Why did they have to give Uhura's quarters to the dolman? Don't they have extra? We know they have extra quarters on the ship.
Maybe they still got that ugly thing in a box in one of the quarters in the guest room, so.
He came back.
Yeah.
They do a lot of these diplomatic missions. They have to have extra quarters. And where is Uhura sleeping? Well, she's probably with Kirk now I think about her. I mean, where is she sleeping?
Bunking up with Chapel or something. I don't know. So Spock takes the command chair as Kirk goes to the turbo lift. In the Elasian's quarters, she's throwing things at the ambassador. She calls him a swine. Petrie tries to explain what the gifts are and why they are so important, and Elaan keeps throwing a fit. Kirk enters and says, I understand you're unhappy with your quarters. And she yells, quarters, and throws something at Kirk that breaks on the wall behind him.
It looked like that surprised William Shatner when it happened.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah.
Kirk says, my communications officer generously vacated the room, hoping you would find it satisfactory. Elaan says, I do not find them so. Must my bitterness be compounded with that ridiculous ambassador aboard your ship?
And the gift that he brought her was a dish. It was a Petri dish. See, I had to make that joke up while I was watching the show because I was just kind of getting bored. Although I did like when she was throwing a fit. I thought she did a great job at that.
Yeah, I like when people throw fits and throw things.
Does that happen a lot at work or?
Yeah, not lately. Elaan says, Crichton, remove him and take that garbage with you. Petrie picks up the wedding dress and necklace box and leaves with Crichton. Crichton's one of the guards. They're all kind of like big, tall guys. So Kirk is left in the room with Elaan. Kirk tells her there are no more rooms available. So she says, I will not be humiliated. And then Kirk says, then act in a civilized fashion. And Kirk goes to leave. She says, I did not give you permission to leave. And he looks a little weary of it all. He says, I didn't ask for any. He goes out and Petrie is in the corridor with Elasian guards. Petrie, in a fit, says, this is impossible. It would be an insult to our ruler to bring this incorrigible monster as a bride.
Stop trying to kill each other. Then worry about being friendly.
But if she won't listen to me...
Make her listen, Ambassador. Use a different approach. Stop being so diplomatic. She respects strength. Go in strong.
And he kind of does a thing with his fist,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
indicates something that's,
Something else.
something else. Yeah. It was a little weird, Dana.
So on the bridge, Spock is at the science station. He says, at first it appeared to be a sensor ghost, but I've run checks on all the instrumentation. All the equipment is functioning perfectly. Hey, they must have got that fixed, the sensors fixed.
Yeah, because they were having problems a while back.
Kirk asks, hydrogen cloud reflection? And Spock says, none in this area. Nothing that would account for it.
A gaseous anomaly, perchance?
I left one in the turbo lift. Kirk asks, a spaceship? Scotty calls right at that moment and asks if he must have the Elasians in engineering, and Kirk says he'll be right there.
Oh, once again, they just let him walk all over the ship, do whatever they want to do.
So next thing we see are the Elasians in engineering talking to one of the crew. One of the crewmen is explaining the engines when Scotty walks up and says, well, I suppose, lassie, that even our impulse engines must seem fast compared to your nuclear propulsion units. So Elaan says, we are interested in how the ship is used in combat, not in what drives it.
Engines are for mechanics and menials.
Menials? Without engines, there'll be no fighting on...
Scott, I wish you had told me that you wanted a tour of the engineering departments.
Do we not have the freedom of this ship? We have granted your crew the permission not to kneel in our presence. What else do you want?
Courtesy, remember?
Courtesy is not for inferiors.
Courtesy is for everyone around here, and you'll find you won't be able to exist on Troyius without it.
She looks back at Scotty and then just walks away. Again, reminds me of somebody I once dated. So Spock calls Kirk to the intercom and that the sensor ghost is now moving closer. Kirk orders full magnification and we see a ship far behind them on the main screen. Spock says, our ghost has materialized. Kirk says, a Klingon warship. Just then, Kirk gets hailed again, this time by security, telling him there's a disturbance in the Dolman's quarters. Kirk shrugs and heads out again.
He gets very frustrated in this episode. Like he's got to keep leaving the bridge, going to the bridge, leaving the bridge, you know?
Kirk goes towards Elan's door. So the door opens. Elan comes out and says, remove that Troyan pig. And Kirk goes in and we see Petrie on the floor with a knife in his back. Later in sickbay, Petrie is on the medical table. McCoy says, he lost a lot of blood. It was a deep wound, but he'll recover.
But hold on. So he can fix Petrie, right?
Yes.
But, they couldn't beam Miramani up to the ship and fix her. She didn't even have any, outer injuries.
Maybe McCoy's medical skills have improved since then. Uhura comes in and pulls Kirk aside. She says, a message came in from Starfleet Command. The Federation High Commissioner is on his way to attend the wedding.
But doesn't she say it was super secret channel and stuff?
Yeah.
And then she just blurts it out in front of everybody in sickbay?
Well, that's why I was trying to whisper, because I thought it was still a secret. So,
yeah.
Chapel asks, why are men so attracted to Elasian women if they are so dangerous? And Petrie says, it's not magic, it's biochemical. A man whose flesh is once touched by the tears of a woman of Elas has his heart enslaved forever. Kirk tells the ambassador about the commissioner coming to the wedding.
Kirk did not hear this whole conversation about the tears.
Correct.
Because he was off in the corner talking to her and she was being really loud about the super secret message. And that's why he couldn't hear what was going on in the corner. Captain, we got this message, a super secret message. Only that you're supposed to hear.
Kirk tells the ambassador.
And hold on a second, I got one more thing. Why couldn't she just call him? Call him. And then he could go in the other room where it was, private. Why did she come down to sickbay? She didn't have to do that.
Because it was a super secret message. You don't know who's listening in on the intercom.
I know, but then she yells it in sickbay.
So Kirk tells the ambassador about the commissioner coming to the wedding.
Wait, hold on. Wasn't that the secret message?
I was going to say, Kirk's just going to blab it to the whole crew, so.
And the ambassador's like, well, yeah, I heard her telling you. I mean.
But, my story might come in handy for you later. Yeah. And McCoy says, boy, the fat will be in the fire when the commissioner learns the bride just tried to kill the husband's ambassador.
That was a good line by McCoy.
So next thing we see is Elan tearing apart a chicken. It's kind of a green-colored chicken leg, though.
Yeah, they need a new cook on that ship, man. Because he's first, if the chicken's green, it's And she's supposed to be like royalty, right? You want to be giving them good food, not the stuff that's been at the back of the kitchen for however many years.
Maybe that's what they like. Food going off a little bit. It's got a little more odor to it and stuff. And so,
well, some people really like stinky cheese.
Yeah.
Like really stinky cheese.
Like Limburger.
I've never had Limburger.
I've smelled it before. It does not smell good. It's like sweat and poop mixed or something. It's bad. It's been a long time. So
that smells like it could have been a good night out. I don't know. Miami Beach, spring break. What was it like? It smelled like sweat and poop.
Maybe a little urine thrown in. Yeah, but Kirk tries to talk to her, but she wants nothing to do with the idea of the marriage. The whole time she's just eating like a barbarian. Kirk says he must be the teacher now, and she laughs. She says, "What can you teach me?" Kirk says, "Table manners for one thing."
Dana, this whole part, I really did like, though, how, again, I was pretty impressed how she played this role.
Yeah.
But, the eating part, I thought that was great. And the way she's just kind of chowing down and is like not taking anything from Kirk.
Yeah. She yells for him to leave, and Kirk yells back,
That's another one of your problems. Nobody's told you that you're an uncivilized savage, a vicious child in a woman's body, an arrogant monster.
And so Elaan slaps Kirk, and he slaps her back.
Oh, it's a double Mabinga, Dana. Yeah, it's great.
He turns to leave, and she takes a knife from her sleeve and throws it, just misses him, and sticks in the wall.
Did you see, though, how they did that?
It was like on a wire.
Yeah, and you could totally see the wire.
Kirk looks at the knife and gives her a smile. He says, "Tomorrow's lesson will be on courtesy." So next thing we see is in engineering, Crichton is sneaking around. And he goes to a machine and brings up a device, and then he does something to it, and then device goes back into the machine. Crichton gets interrupted by a red shirt crewman. Crichton stands and grabs the crewman by the face in some of the worst acting of the season, maybe of the whole entire series. And we've seen plenty, Dan. The crewman seems to be killed by Crichton, but it's like he was trying to twist his neck or something, but he just kind of like turned his head sideways, and the crewman went, "Ah!" It's like
so bad. This was the highlight of the show as far as bad. This was the low light, I guess, of the show is what I'm trying to say, was the look on that guy's face.
So meanwhile, Kirk goes to see Elaan. When Kirk comes in, she turns and grabs for her knife, and Kirk pushes her back on the bed and takes the knife away. She says, "You dare to touch a member of the royal family?"
Kirk's like, "I've been on this bed before. Like, this is nothing new."
Yeah. So she runs away from Kirk and goes into another room and locks the door.
What room was that?
Bathroom or closet?
Well, I think it was the bathroom. You never see a bathroom actually in any of the original series, right?
Yeah, it would have been great if she like sat down for a minute and then you heard the toilet flush. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm busy in here. Just give me a second. It probably wouldn't be a gravity flush toilet, right? It would have to be like some kind of sucking type of thing, right?
Yeah, like what they have on airplanes.
Oh, God, those airplane toilets, man. Okay, I got a question for you, Dana. And I've always wondered this, and I'm trying to figure out how to like say that. So you're sitting on the airplane toilet, and you accidentally flush it. Does it like actually pull your colon out of your ass and you know what I'm saying? I mean, the suction on those things is insane. You'd have like a huge ass hickey.
You definitely feel it when, because I've done that.
Wait, hold on. Wait a second. Wait. When you say you've done that, what you're telling me is you've been sitting on the toilet in an airplane and you've flushed it while you're sitting there.
Yeah, I had the trots.
Oh, well, that makes sense then. It would be like a shop vac just sucking it all out.
No, I mean, I was sure that people outside the room were dying because the smell inside was killing me. So, it's like a courtesy flush. I'm pretty sure I did. It didn't suck my colon out. So.
Okay. Just kind of wondering. Yeah, it just sounds dangerous to me. I don't know if I would do it.
Now, when I was a kid, they always said like the waste was just dropped out of a plane.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
I did hear about somebody that this large chunk of blue ice like crashed through their house or into their car or something like that.
Yeah. Occasionally that does happen.
Yeah, and it was from the toilet.
Yeah, but it's not like every time you flush the toilet, it shoots blue ice out. I mean, I think it was just, this was an accident.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Every time.
You see a plane and be like, nope, I'm not going outside. Yeah.
There'd be like, if that was true, man, everyone would get in line just because they want to let go of the huge, blue ice flying out of the plane. Wow, that was a ramble.
Yeah.
We haven't rambled like that in a while, I don't think.
No, we need to throw some money in there.
Yeah, okay, Ramble Jar's coming out.
So, yeah, she's in this room, locked behind the door, whatever it was.
The toilet. It was a toilet.
Closet.
It was a toilet.
Yeah, toilet, okay.
It was definitely a toilet.
She says, "You are warned, Captain, never touch me again."
If I touch you again, your glory, it'll be to administer an ancient Earth custom called a spanking, a form of punishment administered to spoiled brats.
So, Dana, this is kind of like a whole Pygmalion story, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it's going. And wonder if he's going to put marbles in her mouth and make her speak.
Oh, was that part of that? I don't remember that.
Yeah, and then My Fair Lady does that to try to get her sounds more rounded. And she says, "You can teach me nothing, Captain. I will not be soiled by any contact with you."
She's going to soil in the bathroom because that's where she is.
Yeah. And then she hesitates for a moment, and then she unlocks the door and comes out. She says, "There is one thing you can teach me." And she moves closer to Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "I don't know how to make people like me."
That actually was a shocker to me when she said that.
Yeah, maybe stop stabbing them in the back and throwing shit at them.
For a start.
And then we see she's crying. She's got these tears streaking down her cheeks, Dan.
And we know what the tears mean, but Kirk does not.
Kirk goes to wipe away her tears, but Kirk is suddenly affected. We can see it. And he tries to pull away, but then he leans in and kisses her. They break the kiss, and she asks, "What is that ancient Earth custom called spanking? Are you... Dan, I actually have in parentheses here. Wait for Dan's comment."
I was flabbergasted, really. I don't know what even to say.
On the bridge, Uhura tries hailing Kirk, but he doesn't respond.
Well, he's responding, but he's not responding to her calls.
And she finally gets through to Kirk, who answers slowly as if dazed, or maybe worn out. She tells him a transmission is going out to the Klingon ship from inside the Enterprise. We see Kirk is sitting on the edge of the bed with Elaan.
Yeah, Dana, that indicates, I think we got another love child on the way. I mean, it was like a couple weeks ago when he's pulling his boot on, right?
Yeah. Spock reports the transmission is coming from the engineering section. Kirk says security to engineering, and he looks at Elaan, and it's obvious he doesn't want to leave, but he pulls himself away. In engineering, we see Scotty and Kirk and several red shirts surrounding Crichton. Scotty says, "No one saw him, but the devil must have sneaked back in here, and Watson tried to stop him, and he was killed for it." Kirk goes to Crichton and asks, "What kind of signal did you send?" And Crichton says, "You must know I will tell you nothing. Our interrogation tactics are more excruciating than anything you can do."
Yeah, well, I'm going to put you in a room with McCoy for a couple hours, and he's going to tell you his whole life story. You'll be begging for mercy.
So Kirk goes and calls Spock and says, "I need you for a mind meld." Crichton pushes away the guard that's next to him and then pushes something on his belt, and he is disintegrated.
But here's the thing. He asks Spock to do the mind meld, which he could have asked in however many episodes we've done now. He could have asked it almost in every single episode.
But now he's just using them like a tool. That kind of bothered me. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want Spock to be used like a tool.
No, because Kirk's the tool, if anyone is.
Yeah. Kirk says, "I want you to check every relay you've got." And Scotty says, "Captain, you must realize the time." And Kirk says, "Don't waste the time telling me about it. Get to it."
Oh, God, Scotty.
It's like, wait, you got something better to do?
I mean, well, they do have to clean up the mess of Watson, right?
So later in Elan's quarters, she kisses Kirk, and Kirk responds. The doorbell rings.
Why?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the only rooms with a doorbell. Maybe because it's Uhura's, She says, "You cannot resist my love." And Spock calls from the other side of the door, and it's like, "Captain?" Kirk looks to the door, but goes back to kissing Elan.
Yeah.
Spock calls from again. Then the door opens.
So they did get it open.
Yeah, and Kirk breaks the kiss and kind of looks at Spock and McCoy are standing in the doorway.
Yeah.
And they're kind of looking very judgmental, Dan. Spock asks if they can see him for a moment, and Kirk seems like he can't pull away. And Kirk slowly pulls away from her and walks to the door. McCoy asks if she cried, and I think he meant, did she cry when you spanked her? And Kirk looks at his hand where he touched her tears, and McCoy says, Petrie told Chapel there's a biochemical reaction to Lasian tears. It's like a love potion and it doesn't wear off. Spock asks, is it true then? And they're talking to him like he's got like some disease.
Well, he does, Dana, but that's from a different episode.
He says, Bones, you've got to find me an antidote. And Sulu calls and says the Klingon ship has changed course and is heading towards them at warp speed. On the bridge, Kirk orders phasers on standby. Kirk says warp factor 2. And Scotty calls right then and says the matter, antimatter. And Kirk says, belay that order. What is it, Scotty? And Scotty says the antimatter pods are rigged to blow up the moment we go into warp drive. Kirk asks if Scotty can fix it, and Scotty says, not without being blown halfway across the galaxy.
Nothing is ever subtle with Scotty.
Yeah. Kirk says, give us every ounce of power out of those impulse drives. Elaan comes on the bridge, and Kirk is obviously affected by her presence. The Klingon ship is drawing closer, and Kirk orders phaser crews ready. Then the Klingon ship looks like it's going to ram into them. The Klingon ship passes over them. Spock says, I don't think they meant to attack us. And Kirk agrees, says, yes, their tactics are quite clear now, Mr. Spock. They were trying to make us cut into warp drive. That way we'd have blown ourselves up and solved their problem for them. So I love this. Spock says, Captain, is not the bridge the wrong place for the dolmen at the time like this? And Kirk goes to Elaan and asks her to go to sickbay, saying that's the best protected part of the ship. Scotty calls to Kirk and says the dilithium crystal converter is completely fused. No chance of restoring warp drive.
And we see this kind of burned out circuit thing, right?
Kirk asks if there's any chance that they can fix it, and Scotty says, not without dilithium crystals. We can't even generate enough power to fire our weapons.
Weapons? Weapons? It's not like...
Chekhov walked in right at the last second. Back on the bridge, Uhura reports that the Klingons are ordering them to stand by for boarding or be destroyed. So he checks with Scotty on the energy status, and Scotty says 93% impulse power. And Spock adds, we can still maneuver. And Scotty scoffs,
Aye. We can wallow like a garbage scow against a warp-driven starship. Our shields will hold for a few passes, but without the matter-antimatter reactor, we've no chance.
He is just like in full Scotty mode right now.
Yeah. So back in sickbay, Petrie is holding the necklace he had once tried to give to Elaan. He begs her to take it as a token of their desperate wishes for peace. On the bridge, Kirk orders a channel open to the Klingons. Says, this is Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise on Federation business. Our mission is peaceful, but we're not prepared to accept any interference. The Klingon appears on the view screen. Says, Enterprise, prepare to be boarded or destroyed. And the image dissolves. See, I wish I could just give orders like that and just have my picture appear up on the wall. It's like, get back to work and just dissolve. Yeah.
It'd be fun just to have it set up randomly so people wouldn't know if you're really watching or it's like the panopticon. The potential is there that they're always watching, but the people being watched don't really know. So their behavior then is changed just by the thought of being watched.
And Sulu says, Captain, the Klingon ship is closing on an intercept course. Kirk leans on his chair and says, Scotty, can you give me partial power on the phaser banks? Elaan enters. She's in the blue wedding dress and wearing the necklace Petrie gave her. Scotty says, no, sir, not a chance. Kirk goes to Ellen and says, I told you to stay in sickbay. And she puts her hand on his and says, the doctor just kept wanting to probe me. She puts her hand on his and says, I want to die with you. Then Kirk says, we're not going to die. Now get off the bridge. As she goes, they are rocked by Klingon fire. So we see the Klingons fire and the ship is rocked again. Spock reports number 4 shields cannot take another hit. Spock says he's getting some very peculiar energy readings. Spock looks around the room and says the source is coming from the bridge. So he's holding that little handheld sensor thing, and he goes over to Elaan and says, it's her necklace. Spock scans them again, and Kirk takes the stones off of her and hands them to Spock. He says, now I see why the Klingons are interested. And he says to Spock, see what Scotty can do with dilithium crystals. Scotty and Spock are placing the crystals in the system. Looks like they're playing some kind of weird Jenga. Scotty says they'll need to run some tests. Kirk says, test them in battle. Sulu says they're making a run again. Scotty calls and says the crystals are in.
They did get those crystals in pretty fast, though. I mean, and they weren't the right shape and everything else. You'd think it would have taken a lot longer.
So Kirk says, Mr. Chekhov, give him a full spread of photon torpedoes. Scotty and Spock come back to the bridge. Kirk orders Scotty to cut in the warp drive. Scotty hits a couple of buttons and says, fluctuation. It's the shape of the crystals, I tell you. I was afraid of that. Kirk says, Chekhov, photon torpedoes, fire. The Klingon ship is hit. Chekhov says, he's badly damaged and moving away. And he wants Count Chocula for breakfast. So next we see the Enterprise is circling a planet in the transporter room. Petri enters, followed by Elaan and her guards. So she points the guards towards the transporter pad, and then she goes to Kirk, and she says, you won't beam down for the ceremony? And Kirk just very softly says no. Then she says, remember me. She says goodbye, and then she steps on the transporter. As they energize on the transporter pad, she looks like she is about to cry. So later, McCoy enters the bridge. McCoy says, Spock?
I've isolated the biochemical substance of the Elastium tears. It's a kind of an infection, and I think I've found an antidote for
You're
it.
too late, Doctor. The captain has found his own antidote.
Are you out of your Vulcan mind? Do you know how long I've worked on that?
The antidote to a woman of Elas, Doctor, is a starship. The Enterprise infected the captain long before the Dolmen did.
Well, I doubt seriously if there's any kind of an antidote for the Enterprise.
And Kirk says, ahead warp factor 2. And Dan, that's how the show ends.
Dana, you have some information about some interesting things from this episode.
Yeah, Dan, I had commented at the beginning about the quote-unquote armor / costumes of Elaan's guards.
Yeah.
They were constructed out of red and orange plastic placemats.
Probably from the commissary, don't you think?
So the incomplete body armor worn by Tony Young, who played Crichton, was sold in Christie's 40 Years of Star Trek, the collection auction, for $800 US.
Wow, that was way too much.
Placemats. And here's something I was thinking about when watching this. This episode was actually shot before Plato's Stepchildren, and I think somebody had commented on this. So this is an interracial kiss, and it was actually filmed before the infamous Kirk and Uhura kiss.
But not broadcast before. Dana, do you have anything about the characters in this episode?
Yeah, Dan. I looked up France Nguyen, who played Elaan. Very interesting person. She was of French and Chinese, maybe Vietnamese descent. In 1958, she starred opposite William Shatner in the stage play The World of Susie Wong.
Huh.
She actually won the 1959 Theater World Award for her performance.
Wow. She
did a lot of TV over the years, including The $6 Million Man, Hawaii Five-0, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and she showed up in a few episodes of the hit series I Spy, where she met and later married Robert Culp from the show. She was also in several movies, including Battle for the Planet of the Apes and The Joy Luck Club.
Wow.
Did you have some information you wanted to share about her, Dan?
Yeah, when she decided to give up acting, she became a psychologist. Interestingly, she became a counselor for abused women and children, women in prison, and drug abusers.
Wow, that's pretty cool. She's still alive at age 84, Dan, but since she's a psychologist, I'd be scared to have her on the show.
Yeah, she would really put us through the ringer, and the results would not be good.
Do you have anything else you want to add, Dan?
Yeah, the character Elaan actually undergoes more costume changes in this episode, Dana, than any other Star Trek character, with the exception of Barbara Anderson, who played Lenora Caridian in The Conscience of the King, remember that one? And Ricardo Montalban, who played Khan Noonien Singh in Space Seed.
Dan, do you want to discuss themes and dilemmas of this episode?
I think for Kirk, the dilemma really is whether there's ever going to be anyone in his life that's more important than the Enterprise. Is he ever going to be able to have a long-term relationship? How many more love children will he have before the series is over? I think that's kind of his dilemma, Dana. How about for you?
A starship captain, like any leader, cannot waver from his or her duties. How he had that pull on him, but he kept going back to what his duties were and what his responsibility was. And then more sadly, a woman's place is subservient to a man. That seems to be one of the themes of this episode. Everything about this episode was to make her mold to be the type of woman that this royal family would want.
Dana, why don't we talk about the best and worst parts of this episode? Do you have a best part?
Yeah, Dan. Kirk's struggle to stay in control and focus on the problems with the ship. Again, we pick on William Shatner from time to time, but he's really able to convey that. You see the internal struggle. And a lot of people I don't think would have been able to do that as well. Do you have a best part for us, Dan?
The double Mabinga when Elaan slaps Kirk and he slaps her back. I actually really liked it when Elaan was really powerful and assertive and just didn't take crap from anyone, Dana. I thought that was really good, and I thought the actress really played that well. How about another best part for you?
The battle, or the avoidance of the battle with the Klingons and the inability to maneuver due to the warp engines being down. It added a lot more tension. I thought the way Kirk was, in command of the situation and ordering, giving orders, I really liked that part of the show. Do you have another best part?
Scotty and his doom and gloom about the Enterprise blowing up if he does anything to disarm the bomb. I just thought it was peak Scotty. Dana, how about another best part for you?
The Elaan character, I think, had so much potential to be a good character. She completely changes. Like you, I liked the aggressive, assertive Elaan in the beginning. I wanted her to carry out more of that throughout the rest of the show. So, I think that they had good potential there. Dan, shall we move on to the worst parts of the episode?
Dana, this worst part really piggybacks on an idea you brought up earlier, but this kind of theme that an independent woman must submit to a man against her own will in order to do the bidding of others. That was a worst part for me. How about a worst part for you?
Why Elaan changes from raging brat to sensitive, horny lover is unclear. All Kirk says is, okay, I'll get McCoy or Spock to come and teach you. And all of a sudden she just breaks down and says, I want people to like me. So it just very uneven. Dan, do you have another worst part for us?
The outfits by the security guards. You've already kind of talked about this, but to me, they looked really more like Buck Rogers than Star Trek. So Dana, do you have another worst part?
The sexism in this is just ridiculous, especially after Elaan falls for Kirk and she acts like she's subservient to him.
Dana, what happened on this day in history?
Dan, this aired on December 20th, 1968. The number one song in the U.S. is one of my all-time favorites, I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye.
Wow, that is a good one.
And in the UK, the song was Lily in the Pink by Scaffold. Anybody has watched the video or heard the song and still thinks that's great that was a number one song, I don't know what to say about you. On a sad note, author John Steinbeck, who wrote Grapes of Wrath, died at age 66 on that day.
Wow, he was young. I didn't realize he was so young.
Also, Barbara Jane Mackle was rescued, found alive after 83 hours inside a ventilated box that had been buried in a shallow ditch.
Wait. She was buried in a box?
Yep. Kidnapper Gary Christ had directed law enforcement to the area by telephone after receiving a $500,000 ransom, and Mackle's pounding was heard by the rescuers. Christ was captured 2 days later at Hog Island on the coast of Florida. Sentenced to life imprisonment for kidnapping, Christ would be pardoned in 1979 with the approval of Mackle.
What?
And would later go to medical school and become a physician in Crisney, Indiana.
Wait, no, this sounds like a movie. You know what I'm saying?
If it's not, it should be.
Was he like a doctor of oxygen deprivation or something?
Yeah. We learned that later on he lost his license in Indiana and went on to more life of crime, transporting illegal immigrants into the country from South America, and also running some kind of cocaine business out of his farm in Georgia. So.
It's insane, Dana. And the thing is, he only got like 5 years for the cocaine. How is it you only get 5 years for that? He's still alive. Maybe we should get him on the show.
So that's all we have for On This Date, Dan. Should we move on to the counts?
Yeah, let's move on to the counts, Dana. How about the dead crewman count?
We got one more, Dan, and he was fully dead. So that's puts us at 49 and a half.
Nice. Dana, how about the shirtless Kirk ripped shirt Kirk count?
Kirk kept his shirt on as far as we saw, and so we are still at 20.
The he's dead count.
I thought we were going to get one, but McCoy just says broken neck, so it doesn't count. We're still at 22.
All right. I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank.
Nope, not this week. We are still at 9.
Dana, how about the supreme being count?
No, I thought Elaan was going to try to be a supreme being, but she wasn't. So we are still at 12.
All right. Violation of the prime directive.
Nothing this week. That is also at 12.
Taking over the Enterprise count.
Nobody did. So we are at 15.
And then finally, who's commanding the Enterprise?
Now, I get confused on this sometimes. Spock sat in the chair.
Yeah.
What I counted was 3 times. So do we count him 3 times?
I think so, because we actually saw it 3 separate times.
Okay. Well, then that puts us up to 46, Dan. So, Dan, we made a bet that I lost because of McCoy's "I'm a doctor, not a coal miner" comment.
Yeah, right.
I was wondering if you want to try for double or nothing.
No. Well, Dana, what do you have in mind? What is the bet that you're proposing?
I'm going to say that we're going to get one more violation of the Prime Directive.
Where did you look this up to find the answer already?
I swear I have not looked this up. I've done my best not to look ahead.
So, Dana, we have 11 episodes left?
Yes.
Okay, Dana, I'm going to say that there's going to be more than one violation of the Prime Directive. There's going to be at least 2 more.
Okay.
All right, so we're on. We're on now, Dana. Now, if anyone has a problem with gambling or with popcorn addiction, please call 1-800-POPCORN. I wonder what that is. There probably is a 1-800-POPCORN. It's probably a popcorn company. It might be Garrett's. I'm sorry, is this the popcorn addiction hotline?
Wow. Well, if that's a thing, then I need to call them because I'm addicted to popcorn. So
hold on, listeners. We're going to call 1-800-POPCORN. All right, here we go.
Hello there. Thank you for calling 1-800-POPCORN and 1-800-POPCORN.com. America's favorite popcorn and home to the world famous popcorn truck.
Hi, this is Damnit Jim, the podcast, and we have a popcorn addiction emergency that we'd like to speak with you about. Please call us at 509-676-6298. Thanks. Bye. What if they're going to call us, Dana?
It's a popcorn addiction. We got to talk to these guys.
We got to talk them down. All right, Dana. Well, after last week's episode, which I thought was really funny, this one I thought was better, but overall, somewhat of a forgettable episode, Dana.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, Dan, because I could not remember this episode. There's ones I forgot that I saw or whatever, but I mean, watching this whole thing, and it was all pretty much new to me.
Wow.
I didn't love it.
Yeah.
There was some things in there that bothered me, but I mean, I thought they did some really neat things. I thought the character had so much potential.
Yeah.
Like you, I don't hate it. Definitely not my top 10, but it's one I would watch again.
Well, what do we have for next week?
Dan, next week is Whom Gods Destroy.
All right, Dana. Well, it was fun anyway talking about this episode, but still had a great time talking about it tonight, Dana.
Dan, like I always say, it's great to get together with you and talk about Star Trek. And once again, we want to thank all of our friends who've reached out to us. We really appreciate the comments, and we can't thank you enough for all the support. Until we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damnit Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at damnitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also call the Damnit Jim Hotline at 509-676-6298. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.